What is up, world? My name is Nick. This is Swiftful Thinking, and we've done a lot of work with collections, but we have not yet looked at sub collections. So that's what we're going to jump into now. Sub collections work in a very similar way to the top level collections that we've been working with, except they're inside a document inside another collection. And in order to access them and read and write to them, we have to change our code a little bit. So this is kind of more something that I just wanted to clarify. You guys could probably figure this out on your own, but let's just jump into the code, go through some quick examples that are maybe a little more realistic to how or why we would want to do this in our applications.
Yo, what is up? We are back. I hope you all are ready to write a little bit more code now. I think this is going to be the last Firestore video. So we've done a lot of Firestore. I feel like we covered like pretty much everything that Firestore does, except for listening, which we're going to get into in this video. So we're going to build off, obviously, what we've done in the last bunch of videos. And we're going to start this video by doing probably about 10 minutes of UI setup before we actually get into the new code. So our app right now we have a products screen, and a bunch of videos back, we set up a user profile screen. And so let's put that all together now. So what I'm going to do is let's create another group here in our core. Let's call it tab bar. And inside the tab bar is going to be a SwiftUI view. Call it tab bar view. And the tab bar view, you guessed it, is going to have a tab bar. Is it a tab view with some screens on it? Put the canvas on the screen so we can see what we are doing. All right, we got our tab bar at the bottom here. So in our root view right now, we have a navigation stack and then products view, and then we made a profile view earlier. Let's copy both of those, put them into our tab bar view. All right, and it looks like we need a binding to show sign in view. So let's just pass that in here. Add binding var show sign in view type rule. Should make that go away. And then let's give it maybe a tab item with an image of system name. We need to find an icon for the products view. So let's click the little plus in the top right corner of Xcode. And now we can go to this icon section and look at what we want here. Is there anything for product or maybe item? Or let's just scroll down and find something cool. Let's do, I don't know, maybe, is there a cart? Yeah, let's do a cart because maybe it's like we're shopping, it's a shopping cart in our products. All right, so we're going to look for cart, put that in here. Let's fix the preview, constant, false. Let's use another text here that says maybe products. All right, it looks like we want to get this into a navigation stack, right? So we get the nav bar at the top. So maybe we can wrap this in a nav stack. And can I put this in here? Does that work? That looks like it works. Cool. I think the same thing for the next view. Paste this here, put this here. This will be our settings. So let's do maybe .person, and we'll call this profile. Cool. We got our profile view. We got our products view. I guess I'm not signed in, and maybe that's why this is blank right now. Before we move forward, let's run our app, make sure that this works. So put our tab bar view at the root here. So we can just put here a tab bar view, a show sign in view. I'm going to delete this. Look how nice and clean the root of our app is now. All right, let's run it to the simulator and check it out, see if it works. All right, so we got our products view. Is it still working? Let's try to filter, sort, cool. We got our profile view, awesome. This is looking good, guys. I know the UI doesn't look great, but this is a very functional app, and let's give it that, right? We're going to create one more tab. We're going to put it right in the middle here. So let's go back to our tab bar view quick. Get another tab going here. We don't have it built yet, so let's just put in maybe a color.red. And this tab is going to be, it's going to be like my products. So products that you favorited or liked. So I'm just going to put maybe, let's call it favorites. And let's find another icon to put in here. Maybe we can do like a star. Yes, star is fine. Let's see, are we using fill? Yeah, star.fill. I think that'll, and these will be our favorites. And so what we're going to now build out is essentially users are going to go to the product screen. They're going to click on one and they're going to add it to their favorites. And then we're going to have a list of favorites for the user on that other screen. When we do this, we need to decide if we want to allow user to add the same product multiple times as a favorite or not. And there are use cases for both of those. So we got our middle tab going here, and let's set that up. I'm going to create another folder, and let's call this favorites. And of course, we're going to have a view. We're going to call it favorite view. Enter. Zoom. The favorites, let's move it underneath. So just like in our app, let's put the authentication up at the top. And let's move the favorites down between products and profile. I think that looks good. Awesome. All right, in our favorites, we want to do, basically we're going to do the same UI that we have on our product screen. We're just going to show different products and we're not going to have filters. So let's go to the products view. And I'm going to go up to the list here that we have at the top. I'm going to take the nav title as well, copy this, and paste it into our favorites view. Let's create a main actor final class, and we'll call this favorite view model conform to observable object, and open the brackets. To initialize it from our view at state object private var view model, set it equal to a favorite view model. All right. Now, in our view model, we're going to have an array of products. So just like the products view, where we have our array of products, we're just going to come to the favorite view and have an array of products. It's the same. We're even going to use the same UI, so it's a product cell view, and we don't need our pagination here. So is it pagination or pagination? I don't really know. You guys can correct me. This is the favorites view. And let's see what that looks like on the screen. I'm going to add one more function called get favorites, or maybe we should do get all favorites. Get favorites is fine. And when this screen loads on appear, we're going to call view model get favorite. All right, so in here, obviously we need some sort of function to fetch from our database and get all of the favorites. For right now, we're going to leave it blank. Let's just make sure that the screen loads. Let's put our favorite view on in the tab bar. Go back to the tab bar, color out red. Let's change it to favorite view. And hopefully this loads. And yeah, we got to wrap it in a nav stack because that's what we'll be in by the time we get to this screen. Favorites, and we got no products right now because obviously we have no products. All right, now let's create a little bit of some logic so we can start adding favorites for this current user. So what we're going to do is basically have users be able to click somewhere on this and then add it as their favorite. And then it should appear in the favorites tab. There's a ton of different ways to manage these favorites and the UI of this. I'm going to try to keep it simple here because I'm not really focused on the UI of this app. So like normally if someone favorited this iPhone, you would have like a favorite icon and then it would turn yellow. We're not going to do that just because of like time's sake. But what we're going to do is basically you click somewhere in this cell, it adds as a favorite. You get a little notification that it's added and then it appears here. All right. So let's go back to our products view. Let's go down to the UI of the view because we need some sort of action here on this product cell view. I also want you guys to notice here that the view, the UI of this cell is decoupled from the action of the cell. And that's done on purpose. And you guys should probably get in that habit, right? Because if I had a specific action that was inside the product cell, when I reused it on my second tab, which we're going to do, it would have that same action. And I don't want that. I want different actions on different screens. And so the UI of the cell is one view, and then the actions I will add on as modifiers to the view. And so we're going to keep this as simple as possible. I'm just going to add a context menu onto each of these cells. Is this the right completion here? Context menu with menu items. And we're just going to add in a button, very simple button, with a title that says maybe add to favorite and some action. All right, so now when I go to these cells, I can use a context menu, which is if you click and hold on it, you get this little pop-up that says add to favorites. And then we're going to click it and it's going to add to our favorites. So we need now a function to add it to the favorites for this user. And we need to, there's a bunch of different ways to do this. I'm going to try to show you guys a couple. First, let's look at our database real quick. I'm going to go back to our database here. Make sure I refresh it so I have it. And we got to think about, so we have a collection of users and we have a collection of products. And just like the first Firestore video we went through, we got to think about where do we want to put our collection of users' favorite products. Okay. So it's going to be, at least in some relation, it's related to the products. And then in some relation, it's also connected to the users, right? So it's going to be each user has their own set of favorites. And I showed you guys earlier, there's a bunch of ways we can do it, right? We can put the favorites inside the user document. We can add a sub collection of favorite products for each user, or we can add a top level collection of favorited products and then have some sort of user ID for each of those lists. I'm not going to go through that again. If you don't understand what I'm talking about, the first Firestore video in this series talks about that in detail. We do an example. Anyway, what we're going to do is essentially start a collection within the user in here. So each user has a user document, and we're going to create a sub collection of user favorited products. And so it's going to look something like this, where we have favorite products, favorite product. Manually do one first. And so let's just do an auto ID for now. Let's do an auto ID and let's click save. All right, so what's going to happen is we have the user document, and then the user profile is also going to have a collection of favorite products. And when we get into this collection, we need to determine how we want to set up these products. And so there's a bunch of ways we can do this. So firstly, the first thing that comes to mind would be we can get the actual product document here. So we have all this data, and we can literally take that same product, like all of this document, this whole document, and just also add it into the user's favorite products. So we could put that same document right here and have all that document data. And that is one way to do it, because if we did that, we would then have the full entire product, all the data here. So when we fetch the favorited products, we would get an actual product back. We would get all of that data. So that would benefit us, because when we fetch favorited products, we're actually getting the product data back in that same request. So that's good on one end, but the bad part of that would be that the data for each specific product is now in our product collection, and it's also going to be in our favorite products collection, right? And so the data in this user's favorite product collection could be stale. You could imagine a situation where a user adds their favorite product with some title. Later on, we change the title of the product here, but it doesn't actually update to the title that's on the user's favorite product. And that could be a problem in our app. So in some situations like this one, we don't really want to do that. So that then leads us to, how do we reference these products from another collection? And basically we do that with IDs. And we have two options. We can either use the product IDs. Again, let's remember that normally the product IDs are auto-generated. These are just integers because that was what our sample data set had. Normally the IDs look more like this. And so when we set the products in our favorite users collection, the question is, do we want to use the product ID or do we want to generate another ID? And either of those approaches work. But if we were to set the product ID here, we would basically be limiting ourselves so that users can only add a single product one time to their favorites. And that might be what you want, right? In many cases, that's probably what you want. So the ID of this document would be like 1, because that representing that the ID of the product. And then inside the document, you could have some other data about maybe, the date the user added their favorites or something. But again, you can't have two documents with the same ID. So if we use the product ID here, then we can't have duplicates of the same product in this collection, which very well might be what we want most of the time. However, we're not going to do that just because it's a little more difficult to, I think, not do that. And so what we're going to do is essentially every time we create something that's a favorite product, we're going to create a document with an auto-generated ID. And that's going to have this auto-generated ID in it. And it's also going to have a reference to the product ID, which will be like that 2, that 3, the product ID that we are getting that matches the product's ID here. All right, so what's going to happen is we're going to then, and there'll be other data here, right? So like we can have date created. So when they added the product to their favorites, we can add that here. So what's going to happen is when we add a product, we are not going to add the full details of the product in our database here. We're just going to add a reference to the product that this user has. Then what we need to do is fetch this collection, which is going to give us this document back. And then for each product, we then need to query and fetch that actual product. So it's going to be one extra step that we have to do. We can't just fetch the product in one full swoop, but this allows us, I think, to kind of scale and get a better use case of something like this. A good example of this would be like if on Seamless, right? If a user favorites a restaurant, you're not going to copy all of that restaurant data into that user's profile. You're just going to copy the ID of the restaurant that they want, and then you're going to take that ID and fetch that restaurant whenever it needs to come on the screen. All right, so I'm going to delete this document, or let's delete the collection for now. We're going to add it manually in code. All right, so this is going to be a sub-collection of the user, not of the product. So when I go back to our code and I look at where this function needs to go, we have either the user manager or the product manager. And the user manager is where we have the reference to the user's collection. So that makes sense that I want to put this function inside the user collection, even though it includes some data on a product. All right, so let's come down here and let's create another function. So we're going to add another function here called func add user favorite product. Every user, we need the user ID so we know what document to go to. So let's start writing our function. We're going to say try await, user document for the user ID. Now the user document is the document here, and we want to go to the sub collection of the user, right? So we actually want to go to the user document.collection, and we're going to name this favorite product. And then within the favorite products collection, we need to go to a document, right? And so the question is, well, what document ID do we want to use? And in our example, because we haven't done this yet, we want to use that auto-generated ID, which I did before, right? So when I had favorite collection, we had an auto ID. And the question is, how do we do this auto ID from code? Because we haven't done that yet. And so very simply, we can just do document. And this is going to give us an auto-generated document with an auto-generated ID rather. And then we're going to set the data inside that document. And then we're going to set data inside that document. And we're going to do it from a dictionary. So we'll use this completion here. So let's get our data. So we're going to say let data of type a dictionary string any. And then we'll set this equal to a dictionary. And we're going to say the product ID, set that equal to the product ID, which we're going to pass in here, product ID. And we're also going to add date created of the current date. So right now is the date that we created it. Sorry, we actually want to use timestamp because that's better in Firebase. And then we're going to take that data, pass it into this function, and merge will be false. There's no data there already, so it doesn't really matter. We are then going to, this function is asynchronous and throws. All right. And one thing that I mentioned that you saw when I just made that last document is I like to put the actual document ID inside the document itself so that we can decode it later on. And right now we have the product ID, but we don't have the auto-generated ID from this document. So one option would be that we could write this as it is without the ID of the document, and then we could fetch that document back. And when we get the document snapshot, so in our products manager, we did some work with document snapshots. So the document snapshot actually has a document ID, and we can get that document ID back. But we can make this actually even better and actually just get the document ID before we upload this. So what we're going to do here is actually take this line of code and set it up here. Before we create our dictionary, we'll say let document equals. Well, this will be our document. And then we're going to get the document ID. Document ID equals the document.document ID. So think of this as creating a blank document, and then this is going to give us the ID of that blank document, and now we can just put that into our dictionary. So we'll say ID of type document ID, and then we can just reference this document and set data there. Cool. We're going to want to also delete products from this collection. So I'm going to copy this line of code, and we're going to just change it to remove user favorite product. And so we want a reference to this same collection, right? So we'll say, so we'll try await, we'll get this collection. And so when we reference the document now, it's not the product ID that is the document ID, right? It's going to be the document ID, which is different. And so this document ID, really, it's going to be the favorited product document ID. So we're going to say favorite product ID of type string, and we'll pass that in here. And very simply, we will call delete asynchronous, and it will delete that whole document. All right, we're repeating code here and we're repeating code here. So let's clean that up. I want to get a function to get the sub collection for this. So I'm going to come up here, and the same way we have this user document, let's do a user collection. Let's say private func. Let's call this user favorite collection. And it's going to return us a collection reference. This is of type collection reference as well. And so in here, we can paste in the user document dot collection of favorite products. I'm going to pass in the user ID here of type string. And we can take it even further. So just like we get a user document here, we can also add a user favorite product document. Let's call this user favorite product collection. And here we're going to reference the user favorite product collection with the user ID. And then we'll reference a document with, what do we call it? Product ID, favorite product ID. And we'll come up here with the favorite product ID. We'll pass that in. All right, so now we can clean up our code a little bit. And we can come down here, and the documents will actually be let document equals the user favorite product collection with the user ID. And we'll add a new document. And down here, it's actually going to be try await user favorite product document, the user ID, and the favorite product ID, and we'll call delete. All right, now the code is probably just as simple or complex as it was, except we're not repeating this string at all, so we know that it's always going to be correct, right? And if we scale this up and we have a ton of different functions for this document or this collection, we can now just reuse this code. Let's start adding some favorites now. So I'm going to go back to my products view. Where are we? In our context menu, let's create a function in our view model called add user favorite product. It will be, we're going to have to pass in a product ID of type string. And let's make a task. And we'll say try await user manager share dot add user favorite product. and we need to pass in the user ID. Do we have a user ID in here? We do not have the user ID on the screen, so we probably should have done a little bit better architecture to have the UID already. What we can do is just get the user ID first. We'll say let auth data results equals the auth manager shared.getCurrent get authenticated user, and we'll get their auth data result.uid, and then we'll pass in the product ID. I don't really care about errors thrown here, so let's just make it optional. I guess we need to try to get the UID here as well. Cool. In our button, view model, add favorite product, product.id. And the product ID, we look at it again. I think we messed up. The user favorite product, we want it to be an integer. So product ID will be integer because that's what it is in our database right now. And I think we're good. All right, let's run it. And the product ID should be an integer, of course. Let's run this one more time. Try to add some products. All right, we're here. We got our products. The iPhone 9. I feel like they should update this API to some newer products, right? You guys agree? Let's add the iPhone 9 though to our user favorite products, which are not going to load because we haven't done any logic here yet, but hopefully we can see it in our database as we do it. So let's click and hold, get that context menu, add to favorite. Did any problems print out? No. Let's look at the database quick. I'm going to refresh because it's adding a new collection. I do not know what user ID am I on here. Let's Q, this one. Oh, favorite products has been added. And this is an auto-generated ID. So remember in our function for add user favorite product, we added auto-generated document with an auto-generated ID. That's what we're seeing right here. And then inside here, we have the date created, the ID of the document, and then also the product ID 1, which is a reference to the actual product number 1 right here. Awesome. Let's add a couple more. So I'm going to keep this open. And while we do this, I'm going to add a few more. So let's add in perfume oil because I need some good perfume oil, and tree oil. Oh, I love a good tree oil. Let's add that in there. Cool. We got 3 documents here, and this is going to allow us to now scale up if we want, right? We can add in more data here. So maybe the user has some info on these products that they favorited, right? Like maybe they have some notes, maybe they have a priority, maybe they have a completed state, and we can add all of that into this document rather than the product document. Because we did these auto-generated IDs, I can also now add the same object twice, right? So this product, I can now add it again. It's going to have a different ID, but the same product ID as this one. If we instead use the product IDs as the document IDs, we would not be able to create duplicates. We would overwrite that same document. And now this is for better or worse. So in this situation, we probably don't want the same product twice in the favorite products, but there are other use cases in your apps where you might. And so this would be the correct setup in that case. All right, we got these products. We got a lot of code to do still. So what we're going to do next now is fetch all these products and get them onto the favorites screen for the user. Let's go back into our code. Let's go to that favorite view. We have a favorite view model and we have a get favorites function. And now we want to fetch all of those products. And so I'm going to go into the user manager because that's where we have reference to this collection. And let's say func get all user favorite product. And we need a user ID of type string. And let's reference, we'll try await the user favorite product collection at their user ID. And we're going to get documents as. So of course we need to make this async and throws. And it's going to return us an array of something. Now we actually don't have this data model yet, right? Because previously we would fetch a user. We're not fetching the user anymore. We're also not fetching the product. The product itself is in the products collection. We're fetching this document here with this data. So we actually don't have anything to decode it as yet. So let's create a new struct. We're going to call this user favorite product, just to be explicit for now. And the user favorite product is going to have an ID of type string, which is that autogen ID. Also a product ID of type integer, remember, and a date created of type date. Now, I'm not going to go through again all the different ways to decode and encode, but we talked about it in an earlier video how the default for the codable state is actually camel case. And obviously here we did lowercase snake case. So we can change up our encoder strategy, which I showed you guys in an earlier video. We can change the encoder to have a convert to snake case or from snake case. But what we're going to do to be more explicit is create that custom encodable and decodable as well. I'm going to put the coding keys in the above the encoder for now. Cool. So these are our custom coding keys. And let's just use what we used in our dictionary here. So we'll set this equal to this. We'll set this equal to this. And this equal to this. I want to get access to these strings. So let's conform to the string so that we get the raw value here. And now let's be good developers, right? So instead of hard coding this, let's actually reference the user favorite product. Coding key, this is the ID.raw value. I'm going to copy that, paste it here, and this will be the product ID and the date created. All right, so now we're not hard coding any kind of strings anywhere. We will decode to a user favorite product.self. We're going to return an array of user favorite product. Awesome. Let's call this from our view here. We're going to go back to the products view, the favorite view, and let's create a task. And we're going to say let user favorited products equals user manager shared get all user favorite products for the user ID. Again, we don't have the user ID here, so let's access the user ID. We'll say let auth results equals auth manager shared get authenticated user. We have to try to do this. This is going to be the auth data result.uid, and we need to try await these results. I'm going to note here that in an actual app, I would not be having to do all of these fetch requests every time. Instead, I would probably inject the current user ID into like the view model init or into the struct of the view init, or I would have some sort of user default that just holds the user ID so I don't have to make this request in every single view model. That said, this is actually not a very bad approach either because we are accessing the current auth state every time. So if the user's ever logged out, we'll know immediately. And this is synchronous, right? We don't have to await here. So it's really not hitting a server. It's just fetching from the Firebase SDK locally. It's a little annoying to write this, but it's really not that bad in terms of like performance. The one problem here we now have is that we want to put an array of products on the screen, but we get back user favorited product, right? So all we're getting back is this document. And we want to now take this ID and actually get the actual product from this ID. So what we can do is come into our code. And so what we can do is come into our code here and we can say for product in user favorited products, or let's call this user favorited product in user favorited products. For each one, let's say let product equals, and we're going to fetch the product from our products collection. Our product manager shared get product for user favorited product dot product ID. We'll try await the result. And we need to pass in a string. The string is just the product ID. So I'm just going to convert it to a string. And now we're going to get the product back and we want to put it on the screen. So we could just start appending these products to this array. But when we go to delete a product, we're going to want the ID from this product here, right? The user favorited product, we're going to need this ID as well. And if we only keep a reference to the product that we downloaded, we're only going to have this ID or not going to have this ID. And so what we actually want to do is maybe not do an array of product here, but we'll do an array of user favorite product and the actual product. So the user favorite product will be of type user favorite product, and then this will be of type product. If that makes sense, this is a tuple, so we have two different types into one object. We can also make a struct that has a user favorite product and a product, and then just loop on that struct. That's totally fine as well. I'm going to keep this like this for now, and you'll see why in a second, because we're going to change it. And we're going to create here a local array. We'll say local array of type array of products, of type array of this type, and we'll set it equal to a blank array for now. And then if we get this product, so we'll say if let product, and we will optionally, we don't care about the errors. So if we get the product back, we're going to say local array.append a new element. So the user favorite product is going to be the user favorite product that we're looping on, and the actual product will be the product that we just got back from this request. All right, after our for loop, we're going to set self.products equal to the local array. Let's come up here. We need to identify the ID that we want to loop on. And so since this is a tuple, let's access the ID of the user favorite product, right? Because remember, if we have multiple of the same products, those products are going to have the same ID. So we don't want to use the product ID. We want to use the user favorite product ID in this case. So we're going to look for the user favorite product and then call product, or no, we want the regular ID dot self. The product cell view, we're going to pass in not the product, but the product dot, we'll call this item, and then we'll pass in the item dot product. All right, let's build and run to the simulator, see what happens if we wrote some good code or not. I'm going to go to the favorites tab, and bang, we got all of our favorite products. We can even see the one that we favorited twice, the tree oil. That beautiful, beautiful tree oil is in our code twice now. And the reason it's not causing any kind of hashing problem is because the for each loop is using the user favorite product ID and not the product ID, which is awesome. This is exactly what we want. Let's add some logic real quick to delete products from our favorites. And so we're in a list, so we could do those swipe actions, but I want to keep it even simpler. The same way we did the products view where we have the context menu with a button. Let's just add that onto the product cell view here. Context menu, and we're going to say remove from favorites. And let's create a function in our view model called func remove from favorites. And we're going to ask, let's try, I don't care about the errors, so let's just optionally try await user manager shared dot, we wrote so many options here, remove a favorite product. We need the user ID and we need the user favorite ID. Let's get this auth data result back here. Let's call auth data result dot UID, and a favorite product ID we need to pass into this function. It'll be a string. We'll pass that in here. All right, here we're going to say remove from favorite products, remove from favorites, and we're going to pass in the item.favorite user favorite product.id. Remember, we're not passing in the product ID, we're passing in the favorite product auto-generated ID. Build and run and see if it works. I guess after we remove the favorite product, we should probably get favorites again and reload our data here. So I'm going to actually add here get favorites, which we're going to change in a second, guys. I know we don't want to redo this twice. Well, let's just make sure that it works first. All right, we go to the favorites and let's click and hold on one of the tree oils and remove from favorites. Bang, just like that, it is gone. If I look at the database, this should now be 3 that worked in real time. Let's remove another one, delete it, and we can add another one, added, awesome. And that worked perfect. All right, let's start optimizing some of our code a little bit now. So let's go back and look at this. So first, I want to do a little bit of UI work before we actually get into the Firebase stuff. I think this is important. What we're doing when we fetch favorites, we are fetching all of the user favorite products, which we don't know how many there are. And then we're looping on for each product, go and fetch that full product and append it to our array. And this obviously works. If we only have 5, 10 products, this is fine. But think of a situation where the user might have 1,000,000 saved products, right? We'll do this first fetch request, maybe 1,000,000 too much. Let's say like they have 100 saved products. We would do this first fetch request, and then we would loop on this, and we would then fetch 100 more times. We would do 100 extra fetches for each of those products to actually get the product and then append to our array. And so you can imagine that that doesn't scale very well, right? If there's 100, we don't want to do 100 extra fetch requests, right? If this is the UI of our screen, the most the user is going to ever see at a time is maybe like 6 items. They're not going to see 100 items at once. So doing 100 fetch requests at once is going to be overkill. It's going to slow down our app, not something we really want. So in this situation, what we would want to do is actually load each of these products. We want to load all of the favorite products at the beginning, but then the actual product, we only want to load when we need it. So we only do that second fetch request when the cell comes onto the screen. And so how do we do that? Well, what we're going to do is create a wrapper for the product cell view. So I'm going to go to where that is in my code. Product cell view. And right now it's just a UI view for a product. And we're going to right click and create a new file. And I'm going to call this will be a Swift UI view. I'm going to call this product cell, let's call it view builder, and click create. And what we want to do here is create a product. Let's hide this. A product cell view, right? And we want to pass in a product. But when we get to the product cell view builder, we aren't going to have the actual product. We aren't going to actually have the product yet. So up here, we're going to create an @state private var, and we'll call this product of type product. We'll make it optional and set it equal to nil to start. And we're going to pass in a product ID. Product ID. When we initialize this cell view builder, we're only going to have the product ID. And then when this screen appears, we're going to fetch the product and set it here and then inject it into our app. I hope that makes sense. So what we're going to do here is create, let's say, a Z stack for now, and we'll say if let product. So if we do have the product, we'll put that product on the screen. And when this Z stack appears, we will run our function. So let's actually do a task, and we'll set self.product equal to the, try await product manager shared get product for the product ID that we are passing in. Let's create an initializer here. So one of the product IDs is product 1. I think it's that iPhone. Let's open up the canvas and see if we can get the canvas to load real quick. And I don't care about, let's just make this optional. I don't care about the errors right now. While we're waiting, I want to point out that when we do this approach, so we got it right there. Awesome. I want to point out while we're waiting here that if I do a background, let's do color.red, we will notice that there's a time before the product actually loads when the cell is smaller than it is right now. And that might be a bad UI for our app. So if this was a production app, what I would want to do is ensure that the container here is the exact same size as the product cell view is when it is loaded. So this way the screen doesn't have to jank around when the product cell loads. So if this was a height of 100 pixels, I would make this a height of 100 pixels. And an even better way to do that is we could just update the product cell view so that it supports an optional product rather than a full product, and the UI is the same regardless. I'm not going to get into that right now because this course is not about UI, this is about Firebase, but I think this will work. let's jump back into our product sell view now. Or no, sorry, favorite view. And so we're going to revert back now. Instead of looping with all of the actual products, we're going to loop on just user favorited product. So I'll get rid of this. This will be the user favorited product, simple array. Let's call it user favorite products, just to be explicit. And we're going to set self.user favorite products equal to the result of get all user favorite products. And we're going to get rid of this array that we were looping on where we were fetching individual products. Simplifying our code here greatly. We're going to come down here. This is the view model dot user favorite products. The ID, now we can just use the ID of the object that we're looping on, which is perfect. And instead of a product sell view, we're going to pass in a product sell view builder. And the product ID will come from the item.product ID, which we want to convert to a string again. So we'll just do a string here. And when we remove an item, we're just going to remove the item.id. All right, I'm going to build and load. Let's see what this looks like on the simulator. I feel like the loading might be a little janky because of that whole UI thing that I was just explaining. But honestly, as long as it works, I'm going to be a happy camper for today. Go to the favorites and how do we test this? Oh, they loaded already. Awesome. So I guess we saw, let's close out the app and reopen it. There's probably a little bit of a loading state in each of those cells now. A little jankiness when it first loads, but I think that's fine for now. The benefit to this new approach is that these cells are only going to load when they come on the screen. So if we have 1,000 cells in this favorite list, they're basically going to lazily load that second fetch request, and it's going to save us a lot in the long run. All right, so originally this video was going to be on listening, but I think we just spent an hour setting up for the listening, and I'm going to do it in a separate video. All right, guys, that is it for this video. We are ready to rock and roll. And in the next video, we're going to attach a listener to our database and optimize this screen even more. Thank you guys for watching. As always, I am Nick. This is Swiftful Thinking, and I'll see you in the next video.